Now we are live. Hey, everybody. Hello out there in the internet world. Hello, everybody here in the room. Welcome to Walk On. This panel is 5 Minutes in Heaven, episodes 3 and 4. Thank you very much. That's a good reminder. Before we get started, I'm going to go over some house rules. What I saw at the cleanup ceremonies this morning is that a lot of people, this is their first con, or at least their first Wheel of Time con. So one of the things I'm going to ask you guys is just if you have a phone with you, which you probably do because it's 2022, put it on silent, okay? Because I've already been a few panels where people like phones have rang and it's like distracting or whatever, especially for the people who are at home. And then the other thing they want to ask is just who here has not read all the books? Okay, so I got a few hands raised. Kay,
Yes.
what book have you finished reading?
Finished The Shadow Rising.
Okay, has anybody not got up to The Shadow Rising yet? Where are you up to? End of book 3.
I haven't started books yet.
Okay.
Do you plan on reading
All
them?
right. I will tell you this. We are probably going to be full spoilers for book 1.
Cool.
Okay? But we will try and be no spoilers after book 3. Okay? I think that that's fair. All right? This is going to be adding stuff in, right? The concept of 5 minutes in heaven, just for those who may not know, is what if Amazon didn't have a very strict time limit to how long they were going to make these episodes, and we had the ability to add 5 minutes of content to the episode. That means no cutting. If you were here for panels 1 and 2, Joe did not follow that rule, but whatever. Joe did also not follow the 5-minute part of it either. But but yeah, adding 5 minutes of content to episodes 3 and episodes 4, what would we do to make those episodes better, right? So that's what this is. So in that, there may be things that we might want to add that will pay off later. But if they pay off later than book 3, don't talk about it. You can say, hey, this is going to pay off later and leave it alone. Okay? So before we go any further, I would like my distinguished panelists to introduce themselves. Okay, I already mentioned your name, so you can go first.
Yes, I am Kay Sadai. Whatever will wait. And does this work? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's on.
And I am part of the Way of Belief show, first time reader show that's on the Leafcast, and I'm very proud of that.
Happy to have you.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Sarah. I'm also known on the internet as Celtic Mist, and I help write for WattSeries.com, where we talk about all of the Wheel of Time show news. So.
My name is Tom Kokoza. I am 1/3 of Talk Around Riyadh, the Wheel of Time showcast. I am the worst third of that, so I apologize to everybody who's watching this. But thank you all. So my show is very TV show focused. We talk about all the show news. We talk about how we would adapt the books into the show. We talk about casting. We talk about production, all sorts of stuff. Well, yeah, we talk a lot about chickens.
Hashtag hen news.
Yeah. We are going to be doing our live recording tomorrow of our podcast across the way. So if you're interested, you can check us out. All right. So without further ado, 1 o'clock. All right. So before we start, I'm going to give a quick review for those of us following along at home of what happens in episode 3 of Wheel of Time. Episode 3 is called A Place. No, that's not. It's called The Dragon. I can't read. Place of Safety, right? So, So episode 3 begins with Nynaeve. You find out that she's not dead. You find out how she kind of got away. And then you get the dynamic between Nynaeve, Lan, and Moiraine. Moiraine is very, very injured, and Nynaeve wants to get the boys back, and is she going to help Moiraine? What's going to happen there? Everyone's split up from what happened at the end of episode 2. Mat and Rand are on their own. They end up in a mining town full of lovely people. And they meet Tom, who is a wandering bard of some kind. They meet Dana, a barkeep who has a really positive outlook on life, and adventures ensue. And then Egwene and Perrin are lost in the wilderness. They're being chased by wolves. And they eventually meet up with the Tinkers, who are really chill and into braiding their hair. So that's the general idea of what happens. If there's anything that I didn't hit that they're going to add on to, we'll find out. So Kay, I'll ask you to go first. What are your 5 minutes that you would like to add into episode 3?
Oh my goodness. I'm first. Okay. So let's open with the opening that they had and then erase that. But not really, because that can come later. And instead, what we might do is, I thought, as did my team members, because they're lovely and collaborating. It's kind of like I would love to see more Logain in a story, like a backstory. As him being 19, as like a lord of I never pronounced it correctly.
Yielded? I'll go Yielded.
Thank you. So having like a montage of scenarios from like young Logain and like going through this learning of the power and learning that he can use the power, and then going through the kind of fuckery that happens with that. Am I allowed to use that word?
I think, yeah.
Sorry.
We're okay. Earmuffs.
Allowed or not,
Yeah.
but just, yeah, I think there's like a lot that happens with the head and mental health in that way.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying, but it seems like it would be a really great thing for us to have had as an audience, to give us more of the backstory of how he became, how he came to that point that we do see where he's got shadows speaking to him and he's making a different decision. So perhaps there's an evolution of learning the one power and then also not really being great with it, and then learning that it really is intoxicating, and he gets worse because of that, and then maybe redeems himself, towards the end, because he does choose to not kill that person. I forget who it is. Yeah.
King what's his face.
There you go. King what's his face. So yeah, I thought that would be really a great use of the 5 minutes of that situation. I mean, it could be not just the opening, but just in general, like, here is Logain and what the real story is that maybe happened, or we don't know, but maybe we do in later books. I don't know.
No, I like that a lot. I think that, I understand why they're like, oh, he's going to show up at the end of episode 3, and then we'll give you a tease of his backstory, but it's really not much. And I think that they even filmed more stuff with him.
Yes, I'm going to talk about that.
Okay, well, I won't go too much into detail then. But I do like the idea of, like, almost you're doing a juxtaposition of the main characters, if you will, trying to find their way in the world alone for the most time, when you have this character trying to find his own way in the world, like with the power that he has. And like, you could do an interesting thing, I think, where you don't know at first necessarily that these are different timelines, right? I think that'd be I think that's a very cool juxtaposition. So in the back.
I'd love to have more of the prophecies of the dragon brought in, and they would be perfect.
Yes.
With the prophecies.
Exactly. I didn't mention that. Yeah.
And then when Logain got the picture, it's like, well, who does the prophecy apply to? If he would know at the end of the season they're going to apply to Rand.
Yes.
Go back and say, what did they say about the prophecy? So it just kind of leaves it back.
All right.
Exactly.
I'm going to repeat
Nice.
that, not because just because I don't know if people at home heard you. I think it's a really good point. So
Yeah.
one of our audience members said, like, it would be good to get more of the prophecies of the dragon and have Logain
Yeah.
like read those things and see how they apply to him, and that would be another way to misdirect the audience. Right?
Yes, exactly. And then like he becomes actually somebody that is okay and able to handle the one power, which is confusing, I think, a little bit for the bigger picture.
Well, and I also like how that ties in with the the title of the episode, A Place of Safety, and like he's also trying to get to a place of safety, but none of the characters really get there at the end of the episode, and he's not going to either because he doesn't know what's going on with him yet.
I just want to say as well, it works really nicely in terms of bookending the episode. The end of episode 3 is the reveal of like we've captured him. It's like we don't really have any context for that. If we did at the start, then that would have a bit more impact.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Any other comments? And then if not, Sarah.
Oh boy. All right. Well, I'm going to preface this by saying that 3 and 4 were my favorite episodes. So this is actually really difficult because there's not a lot that I would add. But I have a few ideas for episode 3. So I liked the Nynaeve stuff at the beginning. I would have actually liked to see more of her journey to following them and tracking them. Oh, got a beer interruption here.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for the offer. Because like there's the whole thing at the end with she has a tell, but that's just silly. And I would have liked to actually see a little bit more of Nynaeve's journey because I feel again that adding some more of these kind of character moments is really the only way that I would improve these episodes. And so that is one type of character moment I would have liked to see, kind of Nynaeve being Mama Bear a little bit and going after her kids. So that was one of my ideas. The other major idea I had was, so Perrin and Egwene's plot was definitely the C plot of the episode. We didn't really see a lot of them, and it was okay, but there just wasn't a lot. So I thought they could have done a little bit more with, who was it that brought up adding more Layla content in episode 1? Somebody did.
It would be Joe. Let's
Okay.
not give him credit, though.
As part of his 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So I was actually thinking there could be a way to add a little bit more Layla backstory, just like a flashback with her and Perrin, I don't know, talking about something, and just to give their relationship a little more depth. Even though we didn't get it before she died, we could have maybe deepened that after the fact. And again, just it would have given more weight to Perrin's struggles and so forth. So those are my 2 ideas. I don't know how long they would actually take, but
I like that.
All right, we
That's
got
what I got.
2 questions here. Jen, you.
Jen.
When you just said Nynaeve being Mama Bear, I think it'd be really funny to see when Nynaeve got back to the village and then found out they were all gone and everyone
Yes.
was just like, yeah, hold on. You let them leave and I just like strap air stuff on and like.
Nynaeve's just like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah. Do everything around here. Just kill the
Yank.
Yeah.
I like it.
Right.
Kind of helps with the wolf thing.
So I have a couple thoughts on that. I do think that is definitely something they could have done in season 1. They clearly made a choice not to do it. We know he's going to be in season 2. And I think the choice for that was just to kind of, we know Perrin's arc struggles a little bit with being thin in places. And I think they're just trying to stretch it out a little bit more. And so, you've got him struggling and just having no idea what's going on in season 1. And then in season 2, he's going to get this potentially a mentor figure that will help him. But
that about Elias, I always thought it was kind of silly how freaked out Perrin was, because you just see a cool guy like Elias in front of you, he can talk to wolves, and you just realize he can talk to wolves. If I were Perrin, I'd be like on top of the world.
Yeah, I'm talking to wolves.
I can talk to wolves, guys.
Right.
So the fact that he just can talk to wolves now, but he has no idea what the hell that means. He doesn't see like a normal person with a beard.
Right.
I think just him being freaked out about it that way, without Elias guiding him, is kind of nice. Better than it.
Well, and one of the purposes of the book is to each of those main characters, just the 3 boys right in the book, they each kind of have a reason why they're concerned that maybe they're the one.
Right.
And they really don't want it. And this was talked about in the last panel, the 5 minutes of having 1 and 2. They should have talked a little bit more about how bad it is to be the dragon, and how that's not a good
yes.
Yes.
So I like the idea of, parents like, oh, I'm talking to wolves. Is this like the dark one? This is
Mhm.
me and it's me, and Matt's got the dagger, and he's getting darker, and he thinks. And I do like how they made it seem like Matt might change it with the male half the 1 power or something. So those types of little bits, I do think having someone there who's like, oh no.
Yeah, I also have some
I talk to wolves.
thoughts on that for my episode 4 edition. So, yes.
Yeah, I haven't thought about this before, but your point about maybe tying in a flashback or 2 with Layla
this would have also made some of the stuff pay off better later in the season, where he's, because it's clear that he's supposed to actually be flirting with the way of the leaf, right?
Right.
And to me, that's one of those areas
What? They are.
It doesn't really pay off very well. I think
Stop.
the way they portray the Tinkers is amazing.
Yes.
Even better, the scene.
I agree.
Even better than the books where she describes, losing her child and all that stuff. But if Karen was confronting a little bit more that he killed this person he loved in a moment of violence where he lost control, it would heighten that jury, because it feels to me that was supposed to be his arc for
Yeah.
season one, and maybe COVID and Barney Harris leading through it off a little bit. But it just, we didn't have.
Yeah, I think we got a lot of that, but it could have had just a little bit more impact, I think, with some more. Yeah.
All right. Anyone else? All right. So I'll throw in some things. I was kind of, I think, on similar lines with Sarah. I think I definitely think that the Perrin Egwene storyline is the one that could do with the most added things. I know that Perrin is not a character who vocalizes his thoughts very much, and they really, I think, wanted to lean into that in the show, and I think they did a good job of that. And I think that the actor Marcus did a very good job in trying to emote and get people to understand what his internal conflict was without having any kind of dialogue about that. But him having some sort of vocalization about being intrigued by the way of the leaf and or really rejecting it in a way that everyone's like, oh, he's rejecting it because he really likes it. There's something that's a little bit more palpable, I think would be good. And Laura, to your point, which I think they did do a moderately good job in episode 2, I wanted them to double down on, wolves are horror creatures, right? In general, that's bad, right? He should be this is bad news, that. And they start in episode 3, they don't call it out, but it's the first time that his senses are heightened. He hears the Tinkers come, and before anybody, before Egwene knows what's happening, right? But if they could play more with the fact that he knows his senses are going out of whack, or that he's getting a sense of he knows when she can't see or hear the wolves, he knows where they are and he points to them. Something where he can start to go this is be scared about the changes that are happening with him, right? He does in some ways become a werewolf, right? There's that, right? And in our world, that's a monster, right? That's not a good thing. So obviously in this world that's not the case, but you should play with that more. I was talking to somebody earlier today. My wife, who had not read the books, saw the second episode of the show, and the wolf comes over and licks his leg. Yeah, she was just she was that's not good. It wasn't that it was gross. She was well, the wolf was clearly bad. And the fact that is attaching itself to him, she thought it was a sign that the Dark One had put his touch on. Yes. So
spiritual conduit.
Playing more with that is definitely where I would go in this episode. The other thing that I would add, if there is time to do so, I don't know, I want to be sensitive with my 5 minutes, is that I want to see a Matt dream sequence, and I think that this would be a good episode to do that in, because after this episode, you don't want to get in his head, right? Because you don't want to, but I think having a dream of him, maybe reliving his fight, to try and rescue his sisters and not being able to do it, would be a good way to have the audience know that he's having the same types of dreams that Perrin has and that Rand has, and they're all playing on what they perceive as their weak spots, right? So those are mine. Any comments or questions?
I just had one comment when you mentioned the wolf leg licking moment. I think that would have been nice to have just that kind of cleared up a little bit, because we never really hear about that again. Did it heal him? I don't know. My husband was convinced that he was going to turn into a Trolloc because he got licked by a wolf.
Combine, yeah.
He's going to grow Trolloc legs.
Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, I think that could have been just an opportunity to maybe he shows Egwene my leg, it
You're
was.
taking your
Yeah.
answer to 5 minutes of Karen turning into a troll.
This isn't a Master of the Deck monster fighting panel, so we'll leave that for her.
Yeah, I think there's opportunity to clarify things there. Now, I will say this in my own, like, I guess against my own comments. Like, you had mentioned that is the C arc, and that episode needs to have a C arc. And I wouldn't want to add too much that would take away from how good the Matt Rand storyline is, because that is the best storyline for those characters in any episode, I think. And it's done so well, and I wouldn't want to overshadow that, but I do think that Perrin needs more. Right, and Egwene gets more in later episodes. Perrin really doesn't get a chance to do. All right, so with that, we'll move on to episode 4, The Dragon Reborn. The episode that when I found out that was the title, like a year before the show came out, I lost my mind.
That was the first Talk Around We Had episode I ever listened to.
Oh, that was the one. I
was like, wow, this guy's mad.
I was incensed. If you want to laugh, you can find out what I thought, because I thought they were putting the first 2 books in the first season, right? That episode 4 would be the end of the Eye of the World in one way or another, and that they would move on. And then I was like, if you're doing that, if you're doing 2 books or whatever it was, I was like cutting main characters. I was saying Nynaeve might not be in the show, because I'm not saying I wanted that to happen, to be clear, but I was like, that was like the level of panic that I had worked myself into. It's a fun listen. All right, so in The Dragon Reborn, this is the episode where you really get to meet Aes Sedai for the first time, right? You get to see their dynamics. You get to see how they're not a monolithic organization, and you get to see all of that playing over the stress of them trying to continue to hold captive this man who claims to be the Dragon Reborn. You get to see Logain. You get to see the cold open of Logain, of him, like as Kay mentioned earlier, like seeing these voices, hearing these voices drive him to do bad things and fighting against that. So you get to see Logain's like strength of character like right away, which I think is an interesting thing. And then you get to see how he has inspired other people, right? You also get to see, you also at the end of this episode get to see Nynaeve and her full potential, right? In a thing that is really, really cool, as long as you're a book reader that doesn't think about how that worked. Right?
Don't think about it too hard.
You also, sorry. You also get to see more of the Tinkers and get to know more about their society. You get to see a little bit more of like Perrin and Egwene's interactions with them. You get to see really what like Rand and Nat are going to be dealing with over the next thing, as they're now trying to find some place where they can be safe as they travel through the world, right? Okay, so that's all I have, which is a generic sense. And Sarah, I'm going to ask you to go first. I'm sorry, but I asked you to go first last time. So.
It's fair. It's fair. So again, this was my favorite episode. I thought it was very well written. So what I would add, just kind of what you were talking about for episode 3, is I would add more of Logain's backstory. As I don't know if they do it as a longer cold open, because it can't be that long, maybe just an additional scene. But we know that they filmed kind of an alternate version of that cold open where it seems like he may have killed his family or other people that he cared about, just based on like there was some concept art that got released and stuff like that. So I think it actually would have been really interesting to have that as well as the cold open that we got. Just kind of showing some of the things that he's struggling with and the issue of, you know, his mental health deteriorating and how scary it is. Again, if a man is the Dragon Reborn, this is really bad. And so we should be worried later on once we find out that a man is the Dragon Reborn. And so I think that expanding on that a little bit would have been cool. I also would have liked to see his capture. I don't know if it would have been necessary, but I think it would have been a really kind of a cool scene, and maybe a little more of his capture instead of the rescue attempt battle later on. I think could have been just kind of interesting to see the contrast between, you know, the Aes Sedai kind of sneaking in and pulling him out and seeming really powerful, and then later on getting that kind of flipped on its head, and we're like, oh, like these these peasants actually came back after us. Whoa, that's scary. Anyway, I thought that could have been cool to see his capture. Maybe even have him like drop a line beforehand or something that kind of hinted at having a contingency plan in case he was captured, because he kind of acts in the episode like he knows that his followers are going to show up, and it doesn't really explain why. And it could have just been like a couple lines that he says to, I don't know, the king dude, hey, in case something happens to me, here's what we're going to do, and then just not say what it is. And so we kind of have that tension going through the episode of what's going to happen, what's he going to do, and then we find out, and it's scary. That's my idea.
All right.
Any thoughts? Omar.
Yeah, who do we think we might have seen in that 3-4 minute extra that you're adding?
You mean the killing his family potentially part? I mean, like the...
One name.
What?
That would have been awesome to have in there. Steve?
Oh, God. Steve.
That's what it is.
That's true. That's what I'd add to episode 4. Who the hell is Steve? Does anybody not know the story of Steve, by the way? In case, okay, people know about Steve. That's good.
I don't think he's in the show. Right.
I never saw him.
Right. And I mean, it's possible, but the actor that was cast, Phil
He's not that
Phil
type
Snowden,
of actor.
right? That actor is not on the show, right? So it's possible that like there was a confusion there, and that was just a miscasting. Like Steve is definitely not a name that you would expect to see in the show, or it's possible like and I think that some of that like we've talked about on our show at least, that he was in some of these Logain scenes that didn't make it into the show. And again, I think that Steve doesn't seem like a real name.
By the way, his resume still lists Wheel of Time, but he removed Steve.
Mm.
Like, it doesn't say Steve anymore, but he's still.
Right.
If you're in cutscenes, you're usually still credited, right? If they hire you and pay you.
Look at the credits.
But he's not in the show. But like, so he may have still have that credit because he filmed his part. Like he's on, like he was filmed. But like, yeah. Right. So I think, right. I mean, there's definitely scenes in episode 1, right? Definitely scenes in episode 1 that were filmed that didn't make it to the show, right? And it looks like there were scenes in episodes 3 and 4 that are the same thing. And I think that based on like wherein like we think he was working, episodes 3 and 4 are the episodes he was probably in. And so whatever, that's definitely what we would add. Is just the 5-minute Steve scene, whatever it would be. Okay. So okay, you are next.
Fabulous, because I totally jumped around with episodes. So I was like super excited about the Logain thing and went to episode 4 for that. Sorry.
It's okay.
You may have caught on to that. So there's other things that I had in mind for episode 3, like Dana boning Matt.
Ooh, okay.
I thought that would be fabulous. Just a fun little thing because it doesn't have anything to do with Rand and his power, but it would just be interesting to see like her deceive somebody so well.
Yeah.
And really capture that part of it. I don't know. Anyway, so I thought that was going to be interesting. So.
I like that.
Again, I'm kind of going back to
It's fine. Go for
third.
it. We're
We have no
flexible.
structure
Got my
here.
notes
Yeah.
mixed up. Sorry.
Sorry.
Lan eventually leaves Nynaeve and Moiraine, and then Lan gets accosted by Logain's ragtag army.
Ooh.
He fights his way out and continues on a search of Aes Sedai to help Moiraine.
Ooh.
That's interesting.
Moiraine.
Moiraine.
Moiraine. I hear that a lot too. Yeah. I also had like a whole thing about, of course, my collaborators helped me with this, but have to give credit. After Matt and Tom powwow over the dead, Aiel, Matt goes drinking and gambling. He wins more than usual, and he leaves with a little coin. He gets confronted by some thoughts in an alley, and he uses the ruby hilted dagger rugby.
Okay.
I was gonna say rugby Hilton Jack. Right? It's kind of tougher sounding, but then the Ruby Hilton Jack, but whatever. He gets away, puts the dagger away, and encounters Rand running away from Dana. As Rand and Matt are running, the camera catches the assailant, Matt, stabbed lying on the ground with the outlines of all his veins and blood. It just seems like it'd be really
Ooh.
intense. Like, great. Black from within, Matt does not lose notice of this.
I like the drama here.
That was
Yeah.
episode 3. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So I think that your dramatic reading there just makes up for the fact that, first of all, I didn't know.
But I totally wasn't talking about
I
that.
didn't know. I just thought that you were putting Logain in episode 3, and I thought
I
I
thought
went
that
with
worked,
it.
to be
Yeah,
honest.
You know
Yeah.
what? I
Oh.
totally just switched them.
that's fine. No, I think that's cool. I would say I love the fact that you want to see the dagger in use, because you don't until the end, and then it doesn't work the way that it does in the books or whatever. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So like seeing the dagger in use, I think would be really good, and then would pay off in 4, because then you would not know like, well, who did this, because like you've seen Matt use it, right? And I also like the early introductions of like where he's gonna his positive aspects, or like like the luck and whatever else. I think that's really cool. All right, anybody have any thoughts or comments or questions?
That just reminded me about another thought I had for episode 3, was just to add a little bit more Tom, because I love Show Tom. Like, I did not really care for him in the book. I'm sorry, book Tom fans.
Oh, weird.
I wasn't into him. Show Tom I love. So I just wanted more of him. Like, they could have even had another song over the credits.
Oh, you really enjoyed this song?
That's not I thought it was
The song was good. I
Yeah,
thought the
Summer
song
Song
was
just
good.
like, yeah.
I thought it was a kind of weird thing that he stole Matt's coins.
good. Well, he didn't. Someone else pickpocketed Matt, and then he pickpocketed the pickpocket.
But he kept it.
And then he kept it.
But
So
he
he didn't
Right.
directly steal.
didn't he totally go? Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't think so.
Oh, was it?
I didn't think so. Maybe. Yeah. Right. I think I thought it was more of like I always took it as more of like, here's a lesson about like not living on the farm boy. Like, I think that Show Tom is terrific, and I wish that he was in more episodes, because I think he's really cool. He's a cowboy, which is a choice that I didn't
is
think I would love. He walks in and he's like in a duster, and he's like throwing like he's out of a Western, I feel like, and I think it's a really cool, like out of the box way, like to kind of reflect the fact that the books pull all these different thematic elements together, and like the show's like, well, we're going to do that too in a way that you may not expect, right? Yes.
No, I feel like there's a parallel between Moraine and when Edwin the Evansfield, the Western Inn, those very thick Kenny Western.
Yeah, with like
Yes.
the spurs.
Yeah, like the swinging doors open.
And again, like Tom, like singing like the way he did.
Mhm.
It's an homage, but I always wanted the harp.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
I wanted poetry. I wanted extravagance. I wanted him to be extravagant, not like brooding and emotional. I want to be like boom.
Yeah, you want him to be like theatrical, like
Oh,
yeah.
Like, everyone, all eyes on this guy.
I agree with. I think that there's a chance. I think we'll talk about that tomorrow. Yeah, in our season 2, but I think there's a chance to show that element of Tom in the next season. Jen.
I was just gonna say, like, I love Book Tom and I love Show Tom, but I feel like Book Tom doesn't go with the show. Like really old guy
Yeah.
with like crazy mustaches and old colors.
He's like doing backflips and shit.
Too much for the show. And they could have toned him down, but they went like in a completely different direction.
They grayed him out.
I did-
They
I
washed
really-
him out.
I think the Tom that we got matches this world better than like the Book Tom.
Yeah. And a lot of like non-readers that I talked to like really liked show, Tom, because they were like, this is not what I expected, but I love it. My husband was one of those people, never read the books, has no idea. And he thought it was amazing. He's like, oh my God, there's a guitar in a fantasy show. That's so cool.
Yeah, and he's cool. Like he's cool in a way that like people in fantasy are not. People in fantasy are cool because they are good with swords and they like fight monsters. He's cool like he's cool. Like he's Fonzie cool. Right? Yeah. And
He's got swagger.
and it's not something that you expect to see in a show like this. I think it was he is. He's a gunslinger. Like I said, he's a very much like he walks out of like a different vibe.
I feel like Tom has very modern language compared to some of the other, compared to Moraine.
Yes.
especially. He talks in a way that we understand in our society now.
Yeah.
So we can identify with that very closely, as opposed to Maureen with her highfalutin stuff.
Yeah. It's kind of like the Everyman.
I have a comment on a question. Do you think that done on purpose? Do you think he talks to people depending on who they are in different ways? Like, is that fair or something like that, like locals who talk differently?
Yeah, he's absolutely an actor, and he's gonna fit in, and he fits in with Green Springs with his decor or his beard, and just the cloak is, muted. He fits into Green Springs, they're gonna accept him. If he goes in with his Court Bard and his lyre, they're not gonna accept him in Green Springs.
Yeah. I do think I think that they will show that. I think that they will show that as the series progresses. Yes.
I just gotta lament, and my favorite moment in the books is when Moraine and Tom meet.
Yeah.
And they do this whole thing where they talk about, everything is like subtle and influence and everything.
We didn't get that in the
That's
show.
my favorite moment in the books, I just wish we got it.
So yeah, I agree with you. I don't think you're going to get the same thing, but I think you will get something like that. But I don't think that whatever. This is just changing to a predictions panel. But like, I don't think that they're going to have a relationship in the show at all, right? But no. I don't think that that's going to happen. I don't think that it needs to. I don't think there needs to be romance there for well, whatever. It's so sorry. Sorry. Anyway, I don't think they're going to do that, but I do think that they can have that battle of wills at different points. Someone in the back had their hand raised, I thought. No, you were just telling me to shut up. All right. So
Just like a 1 second position I wanted.
okay.
When Tom fights the Murdraw, I wanted the blue sparks.
Cool. So okay, I think that would be really cool. I do think that that is the area that I would probably add the most in episode 4. Right? Is like there's no opportunity in the first 2 episodes where anyone learns how to use any of the weapons that they have. Right? Like, I think everyone understands. Hey, I have a knife or I have a sword. Point the pointy end at the other guy. But like, there's a little bit more to it than that. And if you're not going to have anyone train, if you're going to have Lan train the boys, because I don't think Lan wants to. I don't think he sees any value in that. Tom definitely would see value in that. And I think you could definitely have a scene where he's showing them, this is how you fight with a bladed weapon, right? This is how you use knives in combat. This is how you use a sword in combat, because he is trying to get them to survive. And I think that adding that scene in would definitely help play out. And I think it also helps form a bond so that you're like, oh, thank God they have this guy. And then then you think he's gone and you're like, oh, they are on their own. Right. So I think that is where I would add in. Sorry. Yes.
So he's obviously a capable killer, but how do we get his intentions correct? How do we get his motivations correct and portrayed?
So I think that you can, like, they have the scene in episode 4 where he kind of explains, like, about his nephew, and like he's telling Rand, like, look, I think your buddy is in the same boat, and you gotta watch out for that. But I think you can do that same kind of scene, but add it in during some sort of like training thing, like, hey, like they're training, and like Rand's almost like, well, why are you like doing this? And it can start off with like, because I don't want to have to just be responsible for protecting 3 people. You should be able to protect yourselves or help protect me. But then he can get more into the fact of like, look, like
why he wants to protect.
why why it's worth his while to like not just ditch them or like whatever. And you kind of, and I think that would help, I think that would trick audience members who don't know the books to go, oh, well, this is a character who's going to stay in the rest of the series. And then at the end, when he just goes, like, when he seemingly sacrifices himself to get the boys out, you're like, oh, wow, like this was somebody who I wish was going to stick around. They could really use him. And then he's not there.
Again, it's their place of safety from the last episode, and now it's gone.
Exactly. Sorry. Yeah.
So this is sort of a question for the panel, right? So I think a lot of us, even if, like I said, the book metaphysics of the way Nynaeve feels everybody may not work that great in the show, but it's a very powerful emotional moment.
Yeah.
But I was just curious what everybody's thoughts are though about, do you wish that there was any more time with her dealing with the aftermath of that? Because I know it feels like they just don't ever show very much till way later any of the implications of like, oh, she's like, you just hear them sort of say it once, like, oh, look, she's got all this power. But I just wondered if, I don't know if it could have fit in episode
I could
4,
see that maybe being like in episode 5 or 6 potentially, just because the ending was kind of perfect to just have that big moment. But yeah, I think it would have been a good addition.
1, then 2. Sorry.
So what I would like to see is, like in episode 4, it was said, you need to, like Moran came to take over, well, you can't take over, so there's other block. You can block it, and then Leander will leave. Then you walk in, and Leander go by yourself.
Inconsistency, right? Yeah.
So, something to explain that.
Good catch.
Why is she by herself? Where is the second person?
Or how is Leandrin able to do that on her own?
Right.
Yeah.
So, because we all know what she is, but still.
No, I don't. Shh.
You're in
She's
book.
read Aja. Yeah. But I don't, trust
Well,
her. so-
I mean, I was saying,
where you're going.
you know how she treats, how when she's not being watched, how she treats male challengers. I think that's the point that you're trying to make. You see that at the beginning of the episode, right? Like she is fine with going beyond what the rules are in order to deal with this kind of a problem. And like, what's happening here? Is she gonna try and do that again, or like what?
Yeah,
What you're
so, why is she by herself and then, I can't say your name.
I don't know. Who you,
Karening.
Right.
Goes in and finds it by herself, maybe not like, you're going with somebody, but, like, hey, why are you by yourself? And I just come in, like, and then,
okay, I like that.
I would really like to see episode 4, digging a little deeper into the intent of the Red Aja and Leander and
Yeah.
her trying to bring people to her side and watch her doing her little politics meddling going on. And also more of the evaluation of Nynaeve's power. They had to go. They have to sense that, how powerful she is. There was no really acknowledgement of like that hierarchy.
Well, there was like a moment, right, where Logain has like the tear coming out of his eye, and he says something about the sun. She's like the raging sun.
I mean, from the perspective of the ice down.
Oh.
And then sort of like feeling her out, and like being like, listen, like, we have to try to get this.
Yeah, I feel like that's almost like a change that they may have made to the metaphysics of channeling. Like they can maybe tell that someone can, but they don't know anything about how powerful they are until they actually do it. But yeah, they didn't really explain that. So maybe even just some clarification there. could have
Yeah,
been-
about how the one power works, who can see what.
How powerful the power is raised, right?
So,
Or in the technical game later, it could have foreshadowed that a little bit and put Nynaeve's power in perspective as Logan. In that thing.
so I think it's an interesting point. I think that there's definitely change. I mean, whatever. It's clear there's definitely changes in how a lot of the metaphysics work in the series. Some of that stuff may be like, well, they're gonna clarify it later. and like you think it's a change, but it's not a change. It's a plot change that like will be explained. And some of it I think is a real like I don't think that women can sense each other's strength, right? Because otherwise, Moiraine would have been like, there would have been a conversation in episode 1 with her and Lan going like, we got to get this girl in the tower, right? And there's not. But there's definitely like Liandrin takes interest in her before she shows anything. So there's definitely a sense of like, here's a blue chip prospect, and we're going to try and recruit her. I think that.
But it seems to be all things amongst equals instead of like the whole hierarchy.
Yes, I think that.
Right?
Yes, I think that they. I don't know if they're going to do this like if you're stronger in the power. I'm going to defer to you. Although Liandrin's strong, so like it could be that that's subtle, and they'll explain it later. I think that I would have liked to see a little bit more of like the start of like her using Logain as a political tool to like consolidate her own power. It's something that I think like it gets addressed later on. Like I think Alana says like, hey, like she's convincing a lot of people like that, things are not being run the right way. But I think that could have been shown and not told, or like shown that she's trying to do it and then told it's working, because Nynaeve doesn't want to hear it from anybody, but other people might be more receptive to that message. So I will say like this was, and we're getting close to the end. So we're going to but you're happy that it's over?
Yay for the end.
Oh, what? Oh, okay. So, thank you. Yeah, we're getting close to the end, so we're going to start wrapping it up. I will say, I think, Sarah, you mentioned it earlier. 3 and 4 are very, very, very solid episodes of the show. I think that we got the hardest one to do. Although I think the people who have 7 and 8 will also have a hard time following the don't cut things rule, only add things rule. But
It's difficult.
so I will ask, is there anything that we didn't talk about that anybody
There was
here?
somebody that had their hand raised back here. I don't know who it was.
Just about Maureen denied being able to sense that Nynaeve could channel at all.
That's true. It's sick.
Yes.
Yeah,
She denied that she was like, I didn't know she could channel.
that's true.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
they may do something where it's
Faux pas.
until you channel, like there's no sensing, like there's until you channel, and but like the thing of it is that they also kind of then say if that's where they're going with that, and this is episode 5 and 6 stuff, but whatever. The Nynaeve tells the story. Yeah, Nynaeve tells the story of like Egwene having breakbone fever and then miraculously being cured one day. In the books, that's the first time that Nynaeve channels, right? Like that's why that story is told. That is not, I think, the way that I watch the show, that is not what happens. That is a story to show Egwene's strength of will, and that alone. And the first team Nynaeve channels is to save Lan. Like I think that that's what it is. Yeah.
Do you believe in a will magic?
I don't think that there's a will magic so much as I think that they have made Egwene a Taviran, and that like there are 4 Taviran in the village. That's like. But no, in the show they say there's 4 Taviran in the village, right? So I think that her will might be like a Taviran kind of thing for the show, where like she's just so like if she wishes it to happen so strongly, it's gonna happen. And then like you could then say like maybe that's how come Nynaeve gets better at the end. It's the same kind of thing. It's not only channeling; it's a channel plus will kind of combination thing. Yeah. All right, we just created that right here. Boom, stamp it. It's done. I think that is a good
Yup,
place.
TM'd.
I think that's a good place. I'll give. Does anybody have any last comments here on the panel before we wrap it up?
I really loved these episodes also. So I totally empathize with Sarah here when it was difficult to come up with something else that I might add, but there is so much content in the books that it was also kind of like, yeah, okay, grab from places.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, I think in
There's
general,
stuff.
yeah, in general, the decision that they made to expand and use the Logain plot in the way they did was probably the best change, in my opinion, that they made for the show. Overall, I thought it worked really well. So I I just wanted to see more of it. Was really my only problem.
I think they
it was
also
executed well.
nailed
Yeah.
that casting. I think that
Oh yeah.
that like he is so great and charismatic
Absolutely.
and like effortless and like his thing, and like that plays out in scenes in later episodes too. I think you're both 100% right. I want to thank everybody here. I want to thank everybody there. This was a great panel. I hope you guys enjoyed the Rebel Walk-On. Right? For Case and I, for Celtic Miss, for Tom, thank you all. Thank you all. Goodbye.
Thank you. Let's eat. We're done. See you all tomorrow.